Hi everybody, it's Terry Ryder from Hotspotting. The latest price figures from CoreLogic have been published recently, and because it's the figures as at 1 January, gives us a snapshot of what happened with house prices in the 8 capital cities according to this particular source. And I do stress it's according to one source because the figures from various other sources are often very, very different, as I will demonstrate. But according to these latest figures from CoreLogic, in 2018, just finished, house prices rose in 5 of the 8 capital cities. The growth was led by Hobart, which according to these figures, where its home value index rose 8.3% last year. Darwin was up 3.7%, Canberra was up 3.6%, and Adelaide and Brisbane were up in minor terms about 1% in annual figures in 2018. Now the capital city average was overall a decline of 6.7% in house prices according to these figures, but weighed down by a 10% fall in Sydney and a 9% decrease in Melbourne. So despite the fact that 5 of the 8 capital cities actually had prices higher than a year ago, the overall capital city average is down because the 2 biggest cities had, according to these figures, quite substantial declines in their house prices. Now it's important to note that other major research sources disagree with these figures. For example, the latest data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics records an annual decline in Sydney house prices, but only by 4.9%, while SQM Research, another respected source of price data, it has Sydney down by 5.8%. So those 2 sources, the Bureau of Statistics and SQM Research, have figures in terms of the decline in Sydney prices much lower, about half the decline claimed by CoreLogic. In terms of Melbourne, the Australian Bureau of Statistics latest figures records an annual decline of 2.1%, and SQM Research's latest figures records an annual decline for Melbourne of 1.8%. Now that's very different from the 9% decline claimed by CoreLogic. In Perth, the latest ABS figures record no change in the house price index for Perth. SQM Research reports a minor decline in annual terms, 0.9%, whereas the Real Estate Institute Western Australia has reported that the Perth median house price rose slightly in October, and then again in November rose slightly and was unchanged in December. So their figures are seeing a slight upturn in prices in Perth. So those 3 sources, the Real Estate Institute, SQM Research and the Australian Bureau of Statistics, all indicate that the price decline has come to an end pretty much in Perth, and we're certainly expecting to see prices rising in Perth in 2019, particularly as the top end of the market has performed so strongly in the last 12 months. But in comparison, CoreLogic's claim is that Perth prices are down 4.5%. So again, the CoreLogic figures are a lot more negative than the figures from all the other sources. But in contrast to all that, the CoreLogic figures suggest that recovery at last is underway in Darwin, with the house price index for the Northern Territory capital up in annual terms by 3.7%. But the ABS has Darwin house prices still down 1.9% in annual terms, while SQM Research records a 4% annual decrease. So it's all very confusing, isn't it? And this is the key point. I think that this is the take-home message, is that you cannot put blind faith in the figures published by one source. The media does. They publish the figures from CoreLogic as if it's absolute fact, as if it's the only source available, and that it's all gospel truth. Apparently oblivious to the fact that figures from other major reputable big name sources are very different and sometimes quite contradictory in contrasting to the CoreLogic figures. So here's where there's broad agreement from the various sources. The Bureau of Statistics, SQM Research and CoreLogic, they all agree that house prices have risen in the past 12 months in Hobart and Canberra and Adelaide and Brisbane. Some of them suggest that Perth and Darwin have recoveries underway, but others disagree. They all have prices down in Sydney and Melbourne, but there is major disagreement amongst these sources on the issue of how much they have fallen, with the CoreLogic figures a lot more negative than those from the other sources. So make some sense of that if you can. I guess what's really important is what's going to happen in 2019. And my general forecast is very much in line with the one published by one of the major websites for price houses for sale and also for price data Domain, and also the ones published this week by Propertyology, a major research entity and buyer's agent based out of Brisbane. The forecast from those two sources are very similar to mine, and that's basically that we're all expecting the decline in Sydney and Melbourne to kind of bottom out, sort of maybe middle of this coming year, and then gradually sort of move to moderate growth thereafter. And at the same time, we're expecting moderate to solid growth in cities like Adelaide and Brisbane and Canberra. We're all expecting some sort of recovery in prices in Perth. And we're all basically expecting the biggest price growth to be found anywhere in Australia in 2019 to be in regional areas. Very similar to what happened in 2018. The biggest price growth was in places like regional Victoria, regional Tasmania, some parts of regional New South Wales, one or two places in regional Queensland. I think that trend is going to be exacerbated this year, even more so. The major price growth is going to be in the regional areas. So we're going to see more growth in regional Queensland, more growth in centres in regional Western Australia, recovery there. Very strong performance in some locations in regional Victoria and in regional New South Wales. And amongst the capital cities, Canberra, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth are going to be producing solid but not boom time growth, I don't expect. And Hobart's still going to be pretty solid, but I expect the rate of growth in Hobart, which was the market leader for the capital cities in 2018, still going to show growth this year, but I expect it to be less because I think that market has passed its peak. Okay, so that's it on prices for now. Let's do it again soon.